The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Do you believe in aliens? Of course you do. Who doesn't believe in aliens? And if that's the case, then why the hell wouldn't you believe in Elias Pettersson?
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, happy Friday and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer currently with Daily Hive, Vancouver. Before we dive into the show, we got to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Canucks because it is your Canucks every damn day. And we're not here without you and you tuning in. So we appreciate the hell out of you for doing so. And you know who we're also appreciative of? Those sponsors, baby. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. This might be a bit of a controversial episode because I'm not sure if many Canuck fans these days are believing in Elias Pettersson to be that dude again, to be the alien, to be that guy that does his deeks and takes this team to the next level. But I'm telling you why. You got to believe in Elias Pettersson to get the job done. Let's get into that to kick off today's episode of Locked On Canucks. Because, hey, apparently, allegedly, the Canucks are believing in Elias Pettersson. So guess what? You should as well. We'll also have Sebastian High on, the NHL Locked On NHL Prospects guru, doing the work, doing the most over there on the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast. We'll have him on to talk about Canucks prospects, specifically what's going on in Abbotsford, his take on some of the guys down there, and also some options for the Canucks at 15th overall and later on in the NHL draft. Let's start by talking about Deaky Pete, aka the Alien, aka EP40. I know some of you want to call him EP116, but I'm not going to go down that road today because a report this week from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic suggested that the Canucks are leaning towards keeping Elias Pettersson. And I do think that there's probably a segment of this fan base that is thinking, dear God, please don't keep this guy. But look, it sounds like Elias Pettersson put in the work in this offseason, and the Canucks are believing in what he's selling so far. And again, honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Every dayers know, I think the Canucks pretty much have no choice but to believe in Elias Pettersson and hope he bounces back. Because for the most part, you're not going to get full value in a trade for Elias Pettersson. We've talked about it this week. Like, are you maybe getting Josh Norris in return for Elias Pettersson? You're not getting Natchez in a first like you were before. It's a different situation after this guy just had 45 freaking points last season. But again, it sounds like Vancouver wants to keep him. According to Pierre LeBrun, they like the work he's putting in. And look, if Pettersson really was, tuned out of the Vancouver Canucks, let's call it, would this guy been flying from Sweden back to North America to go golfing with Foote, Hughes, and Demko, right? He didn't have to do that. He'd have to fly across the Atlantic Ocean for a couple rounds of golf with the core group who should be leading the Vancouver Canucks to the next level. And I do want to bring up, again, the grind of the NHL. And of course, I didn't play the NHL. I'm a below-average E-division ball hockey player here, okay? But there's a good article on The Athletic as well from earlier this year talking about the grind of NHL, how NHL players fight physical exhaustion and mental monotony and learn to embrace the grind. And a number of players were interviewed in this piece, including Nick Foligno, Matt Duchene. And a couple things jump out here, but one is just talking about, again, the grind of the NHL season and how much wear and tear gets put on the body during the NHL season. And it's worth noting as well, for those that, again, want to talk about Elias Pettersson and, the fact that he's, a step behind, the shot's not the same. Look, one thing that really stands out to me about Elias Pettersson, and this might blow your mind, but over the last 3 seasons, in terms of blocked shots among forwards, Elias Pettersson ranks 5th overall in the NHL. Only 4 guys ahead of him, and that's Austin Matthews, Noel Acciari, Alex Tuck, and Brandon Tanev. Elias Pettersson has blocked 234 shots over the past 3 seasons. A little over a shot a game he's blocked. We talk about the defensive details being there in his game, and they were evident last season. He was a fine defensive player. But again, we talk about a guy who is not the biggest guy in the world. He's a little lean, maybe not so mean. But this guy's getting some wear and tear on his body for sure. We talked about the skating stride. Maybe that's been affected even. His awkward skating stride maybe could have even affected the knee injury as well. But again, a guy that's, for the most part, been pretty healthy throughout his NHL career, minus this season when he got dinged up, playing through injury the season prior. And then, of course, the North Division season where he was shut down halfway through the year. This is a guy that's had a lot of grind on his body. And one other quote that really stood out to me from Matt Duchene in this article was, again, Matt Duchene is, 34, 35 years old now. He talked about one of the hardest things in the NHL in terms of the mental monotony was that 26, 27-year-old age. Because when you're a player like Matt Duchene or Elias Pettersson, you know that you got a lot of hockey left to play in your career. And sometimes when you get to the regular season, he said mentally it's tough to get through that. Because again, you got hundreds of games left to play. It's hard to get maybe amped up as much to play a game, in November against the Anaheim Ducks. But some of the players, in terms of their mentality, Taylor Hall had some interesting quotes in this article and talking about sometimes being injured makes you miss the game. And Taylor Hall had a quote saying that, basically when he was injured, like he would have been dying to be out there for, a shitty practice after a 6-2 loss, I believe is what he said. Because when you're out of the lineup, you really do miss the game. And hopefully that fire got lit under Elias Pettersson as well. Hopefully it hurt him inside to miss the Canucks' final part of the season where they were trying to push for the playoffs. Right? Because if it doesn't, then that's a whole other story. But for a guy as good as Elias Pettersson is, again, you don't get to that level. You don't get to the level where you are. Again, he was the 7th highest scoring forward in the NHL for the first year and change of the Rick Tocchet era. A guy over a point a game over 400 career games. A guy who won MVP in the SHL prior to coming over to North America. A guy who I know was the Fugazi bubble playoffs, but was a point a game player in his early 20s. This guy's done a lot of remarkable things in his career to make you think that he can be that guy. And I, for one, again, it's been a troubling last 12 plus months for Pettersson. Don't get me wrong. But I, for one, am not believing that this guy is just toast just because he signed this big deal. And look, again, we'll get into it probably next week as well, but certainly some rumblings around the team that they could still trade Elias Pettersson, right? That report from Ben Kuzman talking about the Canucks wanting to trade cancerous players on their team. How can you not think about Elias Pettersson after everything that's gone on this season? But again, this is a guy who has shown through his NHL career that he can be that guy. He's got the skill set to be that guy. And he's got a full offseason now to get it done. And if he doesn't get it done, then you know that the Canucks are in trouble. But at the end of the day, the Canucks are screwed if Elias Pettersson doesn't come back. Selling him right now is not the answer. So Canuck fans, again, sports, this is an escape. And you're going to sit there in your chair and rip this guy to shreds? This is June, man. We're not even playing hockey right now. You got to believe in Elias Pettersson. The Canucks believe in Elias Pettersson, and you should too. Because A, I think he can do it, and B, the Canucks are screwed if he doesn't do it. So believe in EP40. All right, as we get to the other side of the show here, let's talk more about some Canucks prospects. Sebastian High should be joining the show. If not, you're going to be stuck with me, baby. And let's talk a bit about the Abbotsford Canucks kicking off the Calder Cup final tonight against the Charlotte Checkers. Let's talk about some of the Canucks prospects there. That series ahead, and we should be joined by Sebastian High as well. But we'll pause for a break here. You're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. All right. Let's shout out our friends over at FanDuel. you know it. The NHL playoffs are in full swing. Of course, there's a maximum of 3 games left. The NBA playoffs are also in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off, before puck drop, and live during the game as well. And man, oh man, not only are there options to bet live in-game, but you can bet on some futures as well, including the Conn Smythe. And man, oh man, let's look at some of the favorites for the Conn Smythe right now. It really boils down to 3 players. It's Sam Bennett plus 140 to win the Conn Smythe, Leon Draisaitl plus 230, Connor McDavid plus 270. You also got Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk, and Alexander Barkov with much longer odds there. Sergei Bobrovsky at plus 6,500 to win the Conn Smythe. That's an interesting choice too, because he's been pretty darn good through this postseason as well. Calvin Pickard is even on the list, and Stuart Skinner's not even on here, but Calvin Pickard is? What? FanDuel, what's going on? But anyways, that's a bit of a long shot. Honestly, if you're believing in the Oilers to win, there's a pretty good value on either Draisaitl or McDavid there. But whatever you're betting on, make sure you do it on FanDuel, okay? Because right now, new customers, again, you get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com right now and place your first $5 bet. Let's go, baby. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every day. And it's not just Canucks right now, because we got the prospect guru himself, Sebastian High, on the show. Sebastian, longtime listener, first-time interviewer, but happy to have you here, buddy. How you doing today?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to talk Canucks and prospects in general. Like, it's a busy season nowadays. And I mean, we'll see if the Canucks hold on to that first round pick of theirs. But if they do, there's going to be quite a lot of talent left on the board at that stage. So happy to run through some of the options there and overall the prospect pool here today.
Fantastic, man. Yeah, you getting any sleep right now? This is a busy time of year for you, getting all the draft reports together. You're doing the show over there. Are you sleeping, man?
Yeah, it's been limited in terms of sleep hours recently, but the nice thing has been that the scouting season with elite prospects has now been completed, with our draft guide being posted. That's there available if you want to go look at it and read it. There's a lot of work hours that got poured into that project this season, and so there's a bit less work than there was previously on that front, but I have other things going on as well in terms of like article writing at elite prospects and overall still scouting outside of the region that I was mostly focused on during most of the campaign this year with the USHL.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, I was on Elite Prospects today, and I had the pop-up 33% off. Oh, my God. So a little plug for Elite Prospects there. But let's plug some of the Vancouver Canucks prospects, and then we'll get to the draft, because I know that's been your specialty this year, Sebastian. But the Vancouver Canucks prospect pool, not considered to be one of the elite ones in the NHL, but certainly the depth seems to have improved recently, and specifically a lot of that depth being down in Abbotsford. So kind of just curious on your take there. Again, the Abbotsford Canucks kick off their battle for the Calder Cup tonight. Which prospects down there are, catching your attention or intriguing you most in terms of their NHL potential? Because there's probably half a dozen guys you can kind of single out right now.
For sure. Like, there's quite a lot of interesting names, I think, there overall in Vancouver's prospect pool, and especially there in Abbotsford. I think like the big name in terms of the Abbotsford run currently has got to be Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Like he's such a fun player to watch. I mean, he's a guy that with that goal scoring skill and overall like lethality and handling skill in tight, I think he's really taken some big steps in his development since being drafted. He was a player I had quite a few question marks around in his draft year campaign. He was the one I ranked lowest of that line in Jurgen in that draft year, alongside of Liam Ergren and Noah Östlund. I had the most questions with Lekharmaki's like translatability of that trio, but I think he's certainly shown since being selected that he has the highest offensive potential of those three guys. And even in the little cups of coffee he's gotten in the NHL, having played 24 games there this campaign, I thought that, again, not the most consistent just yet at the NHL level, but definitely seen the flashes of talent and ability. And I think you can get quite excited about that prospect down the road in the future. But he's far from the only name there as well. I think that Artur Shilovs is playing a pretty solid campaign this year after that breakout playoff campaign in the NHL. I think that Victor Mancini is a really solid player as well, acquired in that JT Miller deal with the New York Rangers. Atu Ratu is another guy, I think, who's just perpetually just kind of chugging along in his development, right? Like you go back to the beginning of his draft year where he was potentially a first overall pick and all these different things. And he was mostly just a very physically mature player at 16 years old, which got him to look a lot better than his peers at that age, but he hasn't necessarily had that same physical development that other players have had since then. So still a player I think is going to be a solid bottom sixer in the NHL. Really clever, really intelligent, and the skating's improved significantly since being picked. So you have a lot of interesting names. I think what's perhaps lacking overall in the prospect pool, including in Abbotsford in terms of NHL projections, is that blue chip name, right? Like a true player to continue to build around, right? Because I think that you got quite a few solid pieces here. Lekharmaki could be a complimentary top six scorer one day, but he's not going to be a line driver. Tom Willander is a guy that is just really reliable, great skater, intelligent defensively, but you're not going to get loads of offense out of him either. So there's perhaps a bit of a lack of that super high end skill, which is why I think the Canucks are maybe bottom 10, bottom 12 in terms of league-wide prospect pools at the minute. But that's also something that could immediately change with a very good draft if they hang on to that first-round pick this season.
Yeah, and of course, it's the odds of that are seeming, let's call it sub 50%. I've been calling a 45% chance to keep it on the show, which is maybe higher than a lot of people think, because it really just depends who's out there. I'm not sure if they're just going to trade it for the sake of trading it. They do got to get an impact piece. And we've kind of seen in the past, Sebastian, that just trading a 15th overall pick doesn't really get you an impact player. The Canucks would probably have to add another prospect or player to that pick to really get an impactful top six player.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that especially this year as well, I see a lot more value in keeping those mid-teens picks. I think if you're picking around 20, there's more of a reason to move it. Even if you're picking at 9, there might be more of a reason to move it. But I think around that 15, 16, 17 mark, I'm based in Montreal. I grew up here, so looking forward to seeing who the Habs are picking there at 16 and 17. But I see a lot of value in those selections because I think that there's been a lot of talk around this being a weak draft class. That's a bit more about the depth, the late first round and then third round and onwards, I think is maybe a bit weaker than normal this season, but even that's been a bit overblown. What's quite strong, I think, this year is the top 20 group or the top 18 group. And if you're picking at 15, 16, 17, you might get an above average player for that draft slot relative to most other seasons. There's really we have no idea what's going to happen between maybe 8th and 20th overall. It's kind of like a Wild West out there. So I think there's a lot of potential of a guy falling way further than you expect. And then if you trade that before you're on the clock, you might be really kicking yourself of we really wanted that player. We did not expect him to be available, right? Whether it's a guy who brings violent intensity, like Carter Bear, or just physical brutality like Keyshawn Aitchison, you're going to have a bunch of guys that I think are made for playoff hockey that might only be 2 or 3 years away from playing impactful NHL minutes that might still be on the board at 15th overall. So if I were Patrick Allvin and the overall front office staff for Vancouver, I would bide my time a little bit before moving on from that selection. Even if he didn't go to the combine, you have other members of staff from Vancouver who were at the combine. So I think that might also be something that might just be murking the waters a little bit in terms of trying to show other GMs, okay, the pick is available if you give us a really good offer. but we maybe don't have to move it necessarily either, because I think that you can get a really solid player. And remember, Jonathan Lekkerimaki, the top prospect in the Vancouver Canucks pool, where was he selected? 15th overall. I think you can get a pretty solid player in that range. And overall, I'm very curious because there's a lot of WHL talent as well in that range. So you might get a homegrown talent there as well.
Yeah, and a couple of things to piggyback off of there, Sebastian. But you mentioned guys potentially falling right to the 15th overall slot, and the Canucks said that they had Lekkerimaki in their top 10 when he fell to them in 2022. You mentioned Carter Bear. What other names, maybe in that 17 to 15 projected range, what other names do you think could fall to the number 15 slot for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think one name who the whispers we're hearing from inside the NHL who might go significantly lower than where he's expected to go in the public is Victor Eklund. I think there's a possibility that he falls to 15th overall because he doesn't bring that same level of size as other guys in that range. He's only 169 pounds, even though he plays like he's about 250. He's a wrecking ball on the ice, but still has a lot of physical development, but he brings a level of skill that's really close to William Eklund. If you've watched his brother play in San Jose, really fun player. And what Victor brings is a similar level of playmaking, maybe slightly less dynamic, but way more intense. He's a really great checking force. He's great at getting the puck from the boards to the middle of the ice. And for an undersized guy playing in pro hockey for 2 seasons already, I think that's a pretty enticing option as well. But in terms of profile, he's very similar to Carter Bear. So if you have one of those two guys on the board, I think you can't really go wrong with either there. Beyond that, I think Lyndon Lakovic would be a really nice option in Vancouver as well. Another WHLer who's developing in Moose Jaw. Very skilled, 6'4", 200 pounds, still learning how to use this physicality proactively. But I think that in terms of the combination of IQ, handling ability, playmaking, and goal scoring, he might be your best option left on the board in that range. And last but not least, I also want to give a shout out to Jackson Smith. If you want to get a 6'4" defenseman who skates like the absolute wind, can hit like a truck, and was really exploring a lot more offensively late in the campaign, he scored, I think, 1 goal for the entire season, and then he scored 9 goals in the last 11 games of the regular season as a defenseman. So a guy who's really taking those steps. Right. Yeah. And he's a really fun player. We had him ranked, I think, 7th overall or 6th overall at Elite Prospects at year's end. He may very well be available in this range, and he's likely taking the college route as well. So if you want to look at a guy who might take really big steps in his D+1 campaign, I think he should be towards the top of your list.
Yeah, 100%. And let's show that the mock draft you did for Locked On NHL. At 15th overall, you had a guy going to the Canucks that I haven't seen on a mock yet, and it's North Vancouver product goaltender Joshua Ravensbergen. Maybe talk a bit about the rationale there as to why he went 15th overall to the Canucks in your mock draft.
I mean, I think the Canucks could use a bit more goaltending depth, right? With Thatcher Demko's injury record, with Artur Shilov's, do you want your entire hope for goaltending to rest on his shoulders necessarily? I'm not sure long term.
And he's 24 right now, too,
and
right?
He's 24.
So you need to keep putting these guys in the pipeline.
Of course. And with Joshua Ravensbergen, you get a player who I think is just extremely solid and projectable. He's 6'5", 192 pounds, a fantastic skater as a goaltender as well in terms of corralling pucks behind his net, cross crease movements. He's a very, really detailed skater, and his movements are very composed. That's something to keep in mind. And on top of that, I think he's also one of the better puck trackers while also being really, really big. So he brings a lot of NHL attributes to the table. I think he's a very projectable starting netminder for the NHL. I don't think he has elite level potential. He's not the same caliber of draft year goaltender like Jesper Wallstedt was or players in that mold in recent seasons. But I do think that he's going to be a number 1 goaltender in the NHL in 5 to 6 years time. And on top of that, he has a fantastic story. If you have not yet heard Joshua Ravensbergen's story, it's one of the most inspiring in this year's draft class. He was never drafted in the WHL. He was a training camp walk-on. He literally just went to the open camp, tried to win a spot, and not only did he win a spot, he ended up winning the starting job there in Prince George last season, and he's just been really, really good there these past 2 years. Had a 33-13-4 record this season with a 901 save percentage, and he's also looked really good internationally with Team Canada in the games that I've watched. So I think he brings a lot of that kind of like acumen as well, and a lot of projectability. Will the Canucks want to keep on to that pick in order to select a goaltender? I'm not sure. I think I made that mock prediction before we're getting all the rumors of that pick being traded. I think if it's more along those lines, you might see Vancouver just go for like the highest value guy they see on the board. And that's probably not going to be Ravensburgen. But if you want to lead the draft with the consensus best goaltender available in the entire like class, I think taking a swing on him early is not a bad shout, and I'd be pretty surprised if he made it out of the first round. So he's probably going to be selected on day one, and on top of being local, he's also like his developmental trajectory is just pointing skywards, right? Like again, like just a couple of years ago, he wasn't on the radar of any WHL team, let alone NHL team, and now he's likely the top goaltender in the class. That's a really exciting kind of thing to imagine where that trajectory might take him in the coming like 3, 4, 5 years as well.
Yeah, honestly, it's like I said, I hadn't seen Ravensburgen go to the Canucks in any of their mock, but like you mentioned, great story, local product, consensus best goaltender in the draft. And again, all of the Canucks are bursting at the seams with goaltending prospects either. You got Ty Young in the ECHL right now. I wouldn't call him a top prospect. I'm into the idea of Ravensburgen going to the Vancouver Canucks. If they did make that pick, Ravensburgen at 15th overall, he would be the highest selected goaltender in Canucks history. Of course, the highest selected goaltender in Canucks history being Thatcher Demko, 36 overall in 2014. 2 more questions for you, Sebastian, and then I'll let you go. Wanted your thoughts quickly on Braden Coots, because rumblings out of the Combine are that the Canucks really like Braden Coots. They actually took him out to dinner after the Combine as well. So what's your thoughts on Braden Coots as a player, considering that he is perhaps the closest tied player to the Canucks right now at 15th overall?
He's awesome. Braden Coots is just tremendous. We've been loving him all season long at Elite Prospects. He's been like really one of our favorites to watch all year long. And he was not in the easiest position this season either. He was the captain of the Seattle Thunderbirds. He's a 6 foot, 183-pound right shot center. I think adding a center makes a lot of sense for the Canucks. There just isn't that much depth down the middle in the pool, and especially after losing JT Miller, you kind of want to add a bit more depth in that area. But this season, he scored 26 goals and 63 points in 60 games, and what he does that's just fantastic is he's an incredibly intense player, very intelligent, very fast processor, and just incessant pace and intensity. He's a really hardworking guy who brings a level of impressive handling skill and dynamic ability. Not perhaps the most like individually brilliant player that you're going to find in this range, but an overall just machine on both sides of the puck, and a player who was described by multiple people that are draft eligible this season as among the best players they've ever played against. Like Cameron Schmidt, one of the toolsiest players in this year's class. He's probably going to fall to the second round because he's 5'7", but the skating, the handling, the playmaking, the motor, the intensity, all these things are like 8 out of 10, like really, really, really strong. He described Braden Coots as the toughest player he's ever played against in his life. And he's played internationally with Canada as well. He's played against a lot of top players in this age group. And yet Braden Coots was the player that just gave him the most headaches on the ice. And on top of that, a teammate of Braden Coots, who's going to go higher than him on draft day, is Radim Mrtka, who transferred over from playing pro hockey in Czechia to playing junior hockey with the Seattle Thunderbirds mid-season this year. And he described Braden Coots as the best teammate he's ever had. He's a real favorite in the locker room. He's difficult to play against. He's not the biggest guy, but he plays playoff style hockey. I think he'd make great sense for the Canucks. And I think he'd be a really, really fun player to see in that 15 range. I think my expectation is he might go a little bit lower because he doesn't bring that same level of size as other guys. But if the Canucks fall in love with him, I think there are far, far, far worse options in this range of the draft, especially in terms of like upside swings, because Seattle was struggling a lot in terms of producing offense this season, and Coots was bearing a massive amount of that load. He just didn't get that support to have like really big point totals. But I think next season, you might see him explode from like just over a point a game to like closer to 2 points a game than 1.
Yeah, and as Greener, one of our commenters saying for Braden Coots being a 17-year-old captain in the dub, that says something too. Good character guy. And honestly, everything you hear about Braden Coots kind of fits the Canucks MO of who they've drafted in this regime, right? Hardworking, high IQ guys. Maybe not the most dynamically or individually skilled in the world, but really fits the MO of guys that the Canucks have drafted so far in this regime. So it makes sense that they're showing some pretty strong interest in him right now. Sebastian, go ahead.
He's great internationally as well, right? Like he captained Team Canada at the U18 Worlds, and he led the team in scoring with 6 goals and 12 points in 7 games. So, but like you see, when he's surrounded by talent, by people that can match his pace, his creativity, the points really do explode. So I think he's a very fun prospect.
100%. And I think the message here for the Vancouver Canucks, if you're going to trade this 15th overall pick, you better get that top 6 guy, legitimate top 6 guys. Because like you said, I mean, Sebastian, all this talk about it being a weak draft class, I do think that is perhaps a bit overblown. I mean, I'm certainly seeing lots of good players in the first round. You know better than me. Like you said, maybe that drop-off is in the 3rd round. But I guess my last question for you is, if the Canucks do trade that pick, their first pick right now wouldn't be until the beginning of the 3rd round. They have the San Jose Sharks 3rd round pick. So who are some guys that you're a fan of, potentially in that late 2nd round range, or guys that you think could fall to the 3rd round, who would be good value at that range?
Yeah, there's a couple names I think that stand out to me. Like one of them's a player I've watched a lot this season in the USHL. If he's available in the late 2nd round, I'd say he probably falls slightly in order to be available there. But his name is Benjamin Keevan. He's a very dynamic player from the Des Moines Buccaneers, and he's off to playing NCAA hockey maybe next year, maybe the year after. It's not confirmed just yet with Arizona State University. And he's a guy that is like relentless pace, really, really great handling, very strong skater, really strong playmaking as well. I thought that he maybe dropped off a little bit towards year's end, but overall a guy that was very impressive to me. And also going into the USHL, like at the beginning of this season, he was the highest scoring player that was returning to the league. So as a D-1 player, he was almost a point a game. So he's been showing his upside and his creativity for quite some time now. But he's not the biggest guy in the world, but because he brings that intensity, I think that he'd be a nice fit there in Vancouver. And beyond him, we're just going to stick with my USA players because I have a lot of guys that are available in that range of the draft. If you want a big defenseman who has a lot of growing room as well in terms of using his physicality, I think that Sean Barnhill's a fun name as well. He's 6'5", 205 or 210 pounds, really big, great skater, well above average in terms of skating projection. And I think that he's also a really solid passer of the puck. So quite a lot to like there. And if you want just a guy who brings like elite level mobility and really, really good physicality as well as a right shot defenseman with that pick, I think Charlie Trethewey from the NTDP would be a really nice target for the Vancouver Canucks. He's a guy I think that's been undervalued this season. He was very difficult to watch early in the campaign, but he's one of the younger players eligible for the draft class this season. And once he got his feet underneath him, he was just playing really solid, like play killing defense there down the right side. And he moves like he's one of the best movers in the entire draft class, even if you include the 1st round guys. I think he'd be a really interesting guy to maybe try to build into like a number 3 or number 4 defenseman on the right side longer term for the Canucks.
There you go, man. I appreciate the deep dives because, like you said, the Canucks, there's a good chance they're not picking until the 3rd round. And Sebastian, you've been doing the work all season long. So it's been great to get your insights, man. Go plug yourself and then go get some sleep, man.
For sure. So you can find my stuff at Locked On NHL Prospects, where I post almost daily, lots of content coming your way between now and the draft, as well as Elite Prospects. If you want to read my written content, please do go check out the draft guide. It's like 1,800 pages of very detailed work that our entire team put in lots of blood, sweat, and tears in over the campaign. And yeah, it's kind of it for me. I think a lot of my work is concentrated on Twitter as well, like where I boost my stuff. So that's High_Sebastian on Twitter. But yeah, got stuff a bit all over the place here online.
No, man, you got me high on Canucks prospects and you got me high on the draft today, man. So I appreciate you for joining us here on Locked On Canucks. Sebastian, enjoy the rest of your day, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll wrap up the show here on Locked On Canucks. Get to some of your comments on the other side. We'll be back here on Locked On Canucks. You might have noticed, but I'm short a co-host today. So it might be time to put out a job post, because Kyle Bowen, where is he? Who knows? More on that on the other side. But, if you need a person for your business and you need to hire someone like yesterday, how do you find amazing candidates fast? The answer is easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, because Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot. Like right now, I got no co-host. What am I going to do? I'm going to Indeed, because their sponsored jobs comes in handy in times like these. They make sure your job post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up the hiring process with the $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, well, guess what? Indeed is all you need. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks to wrap up. I'm Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks. That was Sebastian High. Again, it's a 420 friendly program here, the West Coast, the best coast. And man, oh man, Sebastian got me a little high on Canucks prospects, but got me a little even more high on the 2025 draft. And again, all this talk about a weak draft, there are certainly going to be top 6 players, top 4 defensemen, potentially even one of the best goaltenders in the NHL that come out of the first round of this 2025 draft. There's still a lot of skill there. And again, I like the Braden Coots being tied to the Canucks. I'm a fan of Joshua Ravensbergen as well. And I'm also a fan of Elias Pettersson. Are you guys fans of Elias Pettersson? Let's get to some of your comments here on Locked On Canucks. Man, oh man, let's go to Kevin K first with the positivity, saying Petey is going to be worth his contract. He's getting used to having a lower center of gravity to stay upright. Speed and skill will come back. Look, I do believe that if Pettersson trains properly this offseason, and he should have all the motivation in the world to do so, right? Hopefully he's not just motivated by the money. Hopefully he's motivated to win and be great. And I do believe that's the case, because you don't do what he did in the beginning of his career without being motivated to be one of the best. And if he trains properly, I don't think there's any reason why he can't get that confidence and swagger back. If he does, improve the muscle. And, that article I mentioned before about the grind, the physical and mental grind of the NHL season, that was one of the big things that players mentioned, is that if you don't prepare properly, which Pettersson did not do last offseason for whatever excuse you want to use, but if you don't prepare properly, you can't keep that muscle on during the season. You can't keep up with the pace of the game. And in the article, some of the older veterans, Nick Foligno in particular, talked about how some sophomore players, some younger players in the league, they do struggle with this. They don't understand how to prepare properly. Pettersson honestly should know better by now. But again, this is really do or die time for Elias Pettersson. Injuries aren't an excuse anymore. He was training in Vancouver before he left. Hopefully, he's looking like Aaron Donald now, okay? No excuses anymore, but I'm still believing that Pettersson can look like this coming to training camp. Let's go. Now, are all of you believing in Elias Pettersson? Of course not. Of course not. There's the haters out there too. And hey, whether you're a lover or a hater, we shout you out here on Locked On Canucks. What do we got here? Howie Wire in the comments saying Pettersson has the skill set, but is lacking the heart, and saying that basically we should trade him while we can. And I think right now it's the reason why you don't trade him is because you're not going to get anything good in return for Pettersson, right? You're selling him for pennies on the dollar. And honestly, the odds are better that he bounces back rather than you trade him for a guy like Josh Norris or whoever else to improve this team. The Canucks, they need a number one center. They're almost impossible to find if you don't draft them. And again, the Canucks just got to reprogram his bay, man. Beep, boop, 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 boop. And again, the alien, I think he can descend on Vancouver once again. Man, oh man, Greener, man, always appreciate you. Some of us still believing in Elias Pettersson. Dan Jardina, Insider Dan in the comments saying he saw footers of Petey shooting pucks on the ice in Sweden. Remember the Elias Pettersson that shot 1 million pucks on net to become one of the best snipers in the game? How dangerous that one-timer was. Again, I don't think this guy has to even shoot 1 million pucks like he did before. It's like just get in the habit of doing it again. Because that shot more or less he was hesitating, he was missing. Just find that groove, find that swagger. And I think that snowball can roll downhill pretty quick for Elias Pettersson. Now, comment or two before we get out of here. Again, Ricky in the comments saying, going to cop a PD jersey to manifest a 100-point season. Man, oh man, you might even get a discounted PD jersey right now. Who knows? Kyle Bowen not here today, and James Moore in the comments saying, I hope Kyle is off spotting PD at Trevor Linden Fitness. Man, oh man, I think Trevor Linden, he took away PD's free pass. PD actually has to pay the full $16 a month now at Club 16, but we all know Pettersson can afford it. Last comment, Abbotsford Canucks on tonight. As Sebastian kind of alluded to, the Canucks really lacking that blue chip prospect, but a lot of solid guys down there in Abbotsford. Of course, Dan Jardy in the comments saying Carlson, Ratu, and Sasson could be a solid cheap fourth line next year. You probably want a bit more experience there, but honestly, all of those guys do have fourth line potential as soon as next season. The Abbotsford Canucks kick it off tonight in Charlotte, 7 p.m. local time. You can watch the game for free tonight on Flow Hockey. The rest of them you would have to pay the subscription for. I think On Hockey is also where you can watch it for free. But let's get it, man. Let's get the first AHL championship in this Utica Commons Abbotsford Canucks history. I'm predicting the win tonight, baby. Let's go. RST Bain's rolling hot right now. But I'm going to say it's other Surrey boys, Ujar Kara, because you listen to Locked On Canucks, baby. This is the show not only with the West Coast bias, but the Surrey bias as well. This is unofficially Surrey's Canucks show. Now I'm out of here. Got to get back to Surrey, but appreciate all of you for tuning in. If you like what we're doing, like, subscribe, follow, leave a review on podcast side. But most importantly, if you like what we're doing, go share it with your friends and go enjoy the rest of the day. I'm Trevor Beggs, and you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.